All right, here we go. What's up, everybody? We are back with another episode here. And today, I know we're a little late on this one, but we're going to talk about the Grammys. And we're going to talk about specifically the land acknowledgements and Billie Eilish. So let's start off with the clip of what this young genius had to say about our immigration policy here. Here we go. This is Billie Eilish, a singer, allegedly, who is accepting an award here at the Grammys.
No one is illegal on stolen land.
So first of all, that got a standing ovation. That's how many dumb people are there at the Grammys. Okay, and no one's illegal on stolen land. That's what gets a standing ovation at a group like that. Okay, remember, these are our elites. These are some of the richest people in the country here at this little award ceremony. Again, it's all self-congratulatory, the whole thing. They give each other awards for making some of the worst music we've seen in a long time, but whatever. So Billie Eilish says no one's illegal on stolen land. And, she's been getting owned online for several days now because it turns out her mansion is also on stolen native land. And I can assume she's not going to be giving it back anytime soon. She could donate the land to the tribe that it was stolen from, that she stole it from, I guess. Because either, she is the heir of this really unfair system that she's helping purvey here, or at least she's supporting. I don't know. She seems like she's not going to give it back. So we'll see. But, the people like her, they become famous for their talents that I guess people like her music. I don't like her music, but I guess some people do. So she has no real level of intelligence. She's just a good singer. Okay. And that's good enough to boost your ego. If you can make, millions of dollars as a 20-something-year-old singing, you probably think you're the shit and that you're pretty cool. So these people think that these celebrities think their opinions on politics matter, even though they didn't make any money based on their political opinions. They made their money for things like acting and singing, things like that. So let's dive into her assertion there a little bit. No one's illegal on stolen land. Let's talk about the land and who stole it over the years. So we don't have great records of how many times the land in California changed hands between Native American tribes, but they were there for thousands of years and they were very warlike. We can assume that, I think they said the Tonga tribe was the tribe that had owned the land before it was colonized by the Spanish. We can assume they did not just sprout up from the ground there and had owned the land for thousands of years peacefully ever since. Somebody else owned that land at some point and they won a war and took it from them. And remember, these Native American wars were extremely violent. Okay, they didn't believe in taking a lot of prisoners, and this wasn't like 18th century, European warfare where you take 10% casualties and come up with a treaty and call it good. Mass genocide was going on. That's what the warfare was like between these tribes. So in 1542, the Spanish come along in California. That's the first time Spanish soldiers make it into California. That's over 20 years after Cortez lands down the Yucatan. But California wasn't permanently occupied by the Spanish until 1769. That's when Father Serra made it up there. And, he was a missionary. They started establishing the missions, but the Spanish military had to follow closely because Native Americans would attack the missionaries. So it's over 200 years between Spanish explorers like Cabrillo landing in San Diego and the permanent military presence that was established there. So, and just for reference, okay, the United States is turning 250 years old this year. So the whole length of the United States existence is just a little bit longer than the Spanish were there occupying Mexico, yet not having a permanent military in California. So In 1769, okay, we established that the missionaries make their way up there and all sorts of atrocities take place, okay? 200,000 Native Americans are killed. They're forced to live on the missions. Diseases ravage the place. It was really difficult if you were a Native American being colonized by the Spanish. And when I say the Spanish at this point, the Spanish military had pretty deep colonial roots in Mexico. So most of these soldiers were not from Spain. A lot of them were native Mexicans who, maybe had some ties back to Spain, had some ancestors that were Spanish, but most of them were not Spanish because at this time, Europe is falling into complete chaos. Remember, in the late 1700s, you get the French Revolution. Shortly after, Napoleon invades Spain. So Spain's got its own problems. These are a lot of times Mexican soldiers that are occupying California under the Spanish flag. So the Native American population is completely decimated. Not all that many are killed in skirmishes. It's mostly diseases and the living conditions on the missions that kill these Native Americans. So that goes on until 1810 when the Mexican War of Independence starts. Okay. And so just so we're clear, this all of California's existence up until now, 1810, nobody has legitimately, quote unquote, occupied the land in California. We've already established Native Americans were fighting over it for probably thousands of years. The Spanish go in and take it. After hundreds of years of integration, it's now Mexican soldiers that are occupying California, and the Mexican War of Independence is starting. So that lasts 11 years where the Mexican, you could call it like juntas, are fighting back against the Spanish monarchy who's been deposed by Napoleon. It gets really complicated there for the Mexican War of Independence, but Mexico wins. And they established the first Mexican Empire. It ends up falling after 2 years, and then they established the first Mexican Republic. And the same exact soldiers, okay, who had colonized California under the Spanish flag end up switching their allegiance right before the end of the war, and they now serve under the Mexican flag. Same exact soldiers. They don't fight any major battles up there, but they do switch their allegiance. So now what you've got is the Mexican flag flying, no longer the Spanish flag, the Mexican flag is flying over California. And the Mexican government owns California for 27 years, okay? Because the Mexican-American War breaks out shortly after the Mexican War of Independence. So Mexico loses the Mexican-American War, and they sign the Treaty of Guadalupe Hidalgo, which ends the war. And the U.S. has to pay $15 million for the territory that's now California and several other Western states. And the United States government has to assume all of the debt that the Mexican government owns the now American citizens. So this is the first time right here. The United States buys the territory of California from Mexico. It's the first time it changes hands in the most legitimate way that it ever has been. It's led up to by war, the Mexican-American War. But again, because of the rules of what started as European warfare and then translates over to North American warfare, you have to buy the property that you take from a government after you defeat them in war. You can't just annex it from them. You have to pay for it. And again, what was paid, the $15 million seems kind of ridiculous now, but that's roughly what we paid per acre in the Louisiana Purchase, where we had no war with France. We just bought for what, France considered it to be fair market value. So the United States acquires California in the most legitimate way that the land there had ever changed hands. Okay? It was not stolen. It was won in a war and then paid for anyways because of the norms of the time. So again, under Spanish-Mexican rule, 2/3 of the Native Americans had been killed, nearly 200,000. Okay, that's between disease, malnutrition, the conditions on the missions. So when historically illiterate people like Billie Eilish are haphazardly trying to use history to justify their crazed ideology that somehow the United States, after winning a war and then paying for the land, now has to let people from Central America come here in any quantities they want. It's insane. Okay. The Native Americans fought over it. The Spanish fought the Native Americans. The Mexicans fought the Spanish. We fought the Mexicans. And then we ended up paying them for the land. And now the United States owns it. The land is not stolen. And the logic doesn't follow at all that somehow people from all over the world and all over South America should be able to just come here because somehow the United States stole this land a couple hundred years ago. The logic makes no sense at all. It doesn't even begin to follow. It's not rooted in even a little bit of truth. The train of thought can't even leave the station there because it doesn't make any sense. But you see, they just can't come out and say that. They can't come out and make a real argument for why they think 10 million people should be able to cross the border illegally. So they come up with these stupid slogans that nobody falls for except the dumb people at the Grammys, where it gets a standing ovation. They gotta hide behind these historically illiterate slogans because they're stupid. They think you're stupid that you're going to believe it. California is not stolen land. Okay. Again, the United States is the most legitimate owner of this land. It was changed hands in the most legitimate way possible. And it's just the whole idea that we're just not going to recognize land because there was a war fought over it in the 19th century is insane. That every single country on the face of this earth is somehow illegitimate under those rules. And people are just going to be able to move wherever they want, just completely forget democracy and the immigration laws we voted on. None of those are legitimate, apparently, because Billie Eilish says the land was stolen because she's never opened a history book. It doesn't make any sense. Again, it's all just I don't even understand how, even if you thought this land was stolen, okay, you thought the Mexican-American War was completely illegitimate and, the money paid, was completely illegitimate. How then does that mean that Colombians can come to the United States and then live here for free? If anyone has a claim to being victimized here, it's the Native Americans, okay? It has nothing to do with people from Central America migrating here. They have no claim to this land. It doesn't make any sense that somehow no one can be illegal on stolen land. Billie Eilish isn't even claiming that the people that the land was stolen from, allegedly, the Native Americans, they're not even the ones coming here. It doesn't make any sense at all. So if someone wants to try and explain to me, or Billie Eilish wants to elaborate here, which she hasn't, she's just been called an idiot a million times on Twitter. She has no response because there isn't a real response. So maybe someone will come up with something. I'd be interested to hear it. Somebody wants to explain how the Mexican-American War means that people from Venezuela get to come here. By all means, go ahead.